My dad is 55 years old, and the healthcare system decided he doesn't need to feel like a man anymore. And that's not dramatic, that's literally what happened. He had testosterone coverage, insurance paid for it. Then a doctor looked at his chart, looked at his age, and said he didn't need it. Too elderly, 55, too elderly. Like there's an expiration date on deserving to function. And now he sits in the house with a kind of tired that isn't from doing too much. It's a kind of fatigue that comes from your body not giving you what it's supposed to give you. The kind where you can see it behind someone's eyes before they even open their mouth. And he won't say that. He'd never frame it that way, but I live with the man and I see it. I try to get him on walks. I've tried helping him start a YouTube channel, stuff that takes almost nothing. And he tells me that he just doesn't have the energy. Not that he doesn't want to, not that he's not interested. He literally says that he doesn't have it in him. And this is a man who still lifts weights. He's not checked out on life or anything, but he's fighting with a body that the system decided to stop supporting. And here's what nobody in this space is talking about. We talk about men's health like it's a discipline problem. Like if you just wake up at 5 a.m. and take cold showers and eat clean, you'll be fine. And that works when you're 22 and your hormones are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But there's a cliff that comes for men. Testosterone drops, and it's a biological fact, and some men it dropped hard enough that they need replacement. Not once, need. And the way that like diabetics need insulin. It's not cosmetic, it's not vanity, it's just this is a man's endocrine system failing, and the solution existing, and the system saying no, you're too old, you don't qualify. And we looked everywhere. My dad and I sat going through insurance options, different providers, different plans, looking at doctors from all over the state, even sometimes out of the state. And it's the same wall everywhere. Either they don't cover it, or they want hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a 3-month supply for something that used to be handled. Insurance used to cover for his testosterone. You know what that feels like as a son, watching your father have to answer to what's wrong with him on a shelf that he can't even reach because of a fucking price tag. That's not some abstracted policy debate. That's just Tuesday in my house. And nobody's making content about this. The men's health conversation online is all about optimization. It's young guys talking about peak performance and biohacking and running blood panels for fun. And that's fine, whatever. But there's a whole generation of older men, our fathers, who aren't trying to optimize. They're literally just trying to function. And they're trying to have fuel to go on a walk with their son. And the system looked at them and did the math and decided they weren't worth the cost. And like I said, my dad still lifts, and I need you to hear that. This isn't a man who gave up. He drags himself to the weights, and he does what he can with what his body will give him. But I watch the gap between who he is and who he could be. There's this moment I keep replaying. It's not just one moment, it's the same scene just over and over. I bring up an idea, something that we could do together, something that would get him out of the door or give him a project. And there's this half second where I can see that he wants to say yes, and then his body just it rejects it. And there's something, and he says the thing about not having it in him. And I nod, and we move on. And neither of us say what we're both actually thinking, which is that this didn't have to be the situation. And the system loves to talk about, mental health now. It's trendy. Put up a blue ribbon, post something in November, but nobody connects the dots when you strip a man's hormones and then watch him lose motivation and drive and energy and literally presence. You didn't just create a medical problem, you created everything downstream of that: the isolation, the weight gain, the mood, the withdrawal. And when those symptoms show up, the same apparatus that caused them to sell him an antidepressant, a different pill for the fallout of not getting the original one. That's not healthcare. It's just it's business model. And I'm 22 and I'm watching this happen to my father, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't make me think about what's coming, because the system isn't getting more generous, coverage isn't getting more compassionate. If they're doing this to a 55-year-old man right now, what does the math look like when I'm that age? When you are? We're watching the blueprint of how they'll handle us, and the blueprint is you age out of mattering at all. And young men talk about masculinity constantly. We debate what it means, who has it, how to get it. We argue about it in the comment sections and podcasts, live streams. But masculinity, in its most basic biological form, the actual hormone, is being gate kept from our fathers behind a price wall while we argue about philosophy. The conversation is happening 3 4 floors above where the problem actually lives. And my dad didn't lose his drive because he got soft. He didn't lose his vitality because he stopped caring. A doctor told him he was too old. An insurance company told him that he wasn't covered. And a system told him, without saying it directly, that a 55-year-old man should expect less from his own body and be fine with it. And he's not fine with it. He just can't afford to do anything about it. And every time I look at him and I see the man he is fighting to stay, I realize the scariest part isn't about what's being done to him right now. It's about when I'm his age, I'll probably remember this exact feeling, watching it happen, knowing the fix exists, knowing it costs money we don't have. And I'll understand that nothing changed because nobody thought a son watching his father fade was an urgent enough reason to fix it.